what's the deal with this whole... Okay, so it looks like we've gotten a ton of questions about Ozempic
Yeah, seems like everyone wants to know more about it.
and really get to the bottom of this whole weight loss trend.
Right. You want to know, like, is it actually safe? Does it really work?
And what's the deal with this whole Wegovy shortage we keep hearing about?
So many questions.
We're going to unpack all of that today with some really interesting insights from doctors.
Yeah, doctors and researchers who know this stuff inside and out.
And we'll even get into how Ozempic actually works in the body, like the science behind it all.
Did you know that Ozempic was originally developed to treat diabetes?
Really? I actually did know that.
Yeah, it's kind of found this whole second life as a weight loss tool.
That's wild.
Definitely something we need to explore more.
We'll also talk about any downsides too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because there's always another side to these things.
And like why using Ozempic just for weight loss might not be the best idea.
Right. It's not just a magic bullet.
Exactly. So to understand the whole picture, we need to go back to the basics.
Okay, sounds good.
Ozempic's a once-a-week injection.
Okay.
And the active ingredient is this thing called semaglutide.
Semaglutide. Okay, so it's not insulin though, right?
Right. It's not insulin itself.
But it helps your pancreas make more insulin when your blood sugar's high.
Exactly. And that makes sense when you remember it was first designed for people with type 2 diabetes.
Right, to help them manage their blood sugar levels.
And here's where things get interesting with the weight loss part.
Yeah, okay.
Studies have shown that people using Ozempic for diabetes often end up losing weight as a side effect.
So how does a diabetes drug lead to weight loss? I'm curious about that connection.
So semaglutide, that ingredient we talked about, it belongs to a group of drugs called GLP-1 receptor agonists.
GLP-1, okay.
It's a mouthful. But basically, GLP-1 is a hormone your body naturally produces that tells your brain you're full after you eat.
Oh, I see. So it's like your body's built in, I'm full signal.
Exactly. And semaglutide, since it's a GLP-1 receptor agonist, well, it kind of mimics what GLP-1 does.
Oh.
It binds to those same receptors in your brain and basically makes that feeling of fullness even stronger.
So it's kind of like tricking your brain into thinking you're full sooner than you actually are.
That's one way Ozempic can lead to weight loss.
Interesting.
But there's another thing it does too.
Really?
It actually slows down how quickly your stomach empties, so you feel fuller for longer.
Wow, so it's a double whammy on your appetite.
Exactly. And because of these effects, semaglutide has actually been approved by the FDA at higher doses
Okay.
to treat obesity specifically. And that's where Wegovy comes in.
Ah, okay, so that's the Wegovy connection.
But as you mentioned earlier, there's a shortage of Wegovy right now.
Right, that's what I keep seeing.
And with all the hype around Ozempic and weight loss, you have a lot of people who don't have diabetes
I see.
trying to get Ozempic, even though it's not officially approved for weight loss.
So it's a supply and demand issue. People are turning to Ozempic because they can't get Wegovy.
It's more complicated than that, of course.
Yeah.
But it's definitely part of the problem. And this trend, well, it's creating some ethical concerns.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's also making it harder for people who really need Ozempic for their diabetes to get it.
That's a big problem for sure.
Definitely something to think about.
We should definitely come back to the ethical side of things later.
Absolutely.
But first, I want to know more about how effective Ozempic is for weight loss. I read an article that said people taking semaglutide lost almost 15% of their body weight.
That study you're referring to did show impressive results, 14.9% weight loss compared to just 2.4% for those on a placebo.
Wow.
But it's really important to point out that they used the higher Wegovy dose in that study, not the standard Ozempic dose.
Oh, that's a big difference.
So while you might lose some weight with Ozempic, it might not be as much as what we saw with Wegovy.
Got it. And of course, it's important to remember that these medications aren't a magic solution.
Absolutely no quick fixes here.
And speaking of practicalities, I've heard that Ozempic is usually covered by insurance for diabetes, but Wegovy often isn't.
That's right.
That must be a big reason why people are using Ozempic off-label, the cost difference.
Makes sense.
Right.
Ozempic can be a lot more affordable if your insurance covers it for diabetes.
Yeah, whereas Wegovy, since it's specifically for weight loss, faces more challenges with insurance.
It's a tough situation.
A real economic barrier for many.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Okay, so we've talked about what Ozempic is, how it's connected to weight loss, and this whole Wegovy shortage.
Right, lot to unpack.
Now, I think we should talk about safety. What are the potential risks and side effects?
That's a great question, and it's important to know that Ozempic is generally considered safe when you use it correctly.
Okay.
But like any medication, it does have potential side effects.
Right. Nothing's perfect.
The most common ones are gastrointestinal, so nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, that kind of thing.
Ugh, that doesn't sound fun.
No, it's not. But the good news is that these side effects are usually temporary.
Okay.
They tend to go away as your body gets used to the medication, and eating slowly and mindfully can really help too.
So it's manageable for a lot of people.
Yes, but there are also some less common but potentially more serious side effects.
Okay, what are those?
Things like pancreatitis, gallbladder problems, and in very rare cases, there's a slightly increased risk of thyroid tumors.
Oh, wow.
So it's definitely something to take seriously.
Yeah, it sounds like talking to your doctor is absolutely essential before starting Ozempic or really any new medication.
I completely agree. Open communication with your doctor is key.
Right. They can help you figure out if it's the right choice for you.
Exactly. They'll look at your health history and your individual needs.
Makes sense. And it's also super important to remember that Ozempic isn't a quick fix for weight loss.
That's a crucial point.
Studies have shown that most people gain the weight back if they stop taking it.
It's not a permanent solution.
Right.
One of the articles we looked at from Columbia Surgery, they had an interesting perspective on this.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
They suggested that we should start thinking about obesity more like a chronic condition.
Oh, interesting.
Similar to diabetes or high blood pressure, something that needs ongoing management.
I like that way of thinking.
It challenges that idea that weight loss is all about willpower.
Right. Like it's just a matter of choosing to eat less and move more.
Exactly. It's much more complex than that.
So instead of viewing Ozempic as a temporary fix, we should think of it as part of a bigger long-term plan.
For managing your weight, just like we would with other chronic conditions.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's about finding a sustainable way to be healthier.
I love that. So let's bring it back to our listeners for a minute. Should you use Ozempic for weight loss?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, and the sources we've looked at, they have a pretty balanced view on this.
Yeah, doctors generally recommend it for patients who have both type 2 diabetes and obesity.
Okay, so to help them manage both conditions at the same time.
Right, but they don't recommend using it just for cosmetic weight loss or for a short period of time.
Makes sense. And this is where you really have to ask yourself, what are your goals for weight loss?
Yeah, what are your expectations?
Are you looking for a quick fix, or are you committed to making real, lasting changes?
It's a big decision.
It is. If you're just trying to lose a few pounds for an event, Ozempic might not be the answer.
Right.
But if you're dealing with obesity and looking for a long-term solution, it might be worth talking to your doctor.
Definitely a conversation worth having.
One more thing that I found really interesting in the articles was how medications like Ozempic are changing how we view obesity as a society.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
It's shifting away from this idea of personal willpower and blame.
Which can be so harmful.
Exactly. And instead, we're starting to recognize obesity as a medical condition that can be treated.
It's a huge step towards reducing stigma and increasing access to care.
Like we're finally acknowledging the complexity of obesity and moving past those simplistic ideas like just eat less, move more.
Exactly.
Which we know are not helpful and often just lead to more shame and guilt.
It's about time we move towards a more compassionate and understanding approach to weight management.
I couldn't agree more.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into Ozempic.
We have from the basics of the medication
To its connection with weight loss.
the Wegovy shortage, potential side effects, and even how our views on obesity are evolving.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But we're not done yet. There's still so much more to explore,
Stay tuned for part 2.
where we'll go deeper into the psychological side of weight loss
The ethical considerations of using Ozempic.
and what the future of weight management might hold.
It's going to be good.
It is.
Welcome back. We've been talking about the science behind Ozempic and how it's become this popular weight loss tool. But as you learn more about it,
Yeah.
it's really important to consider not just the physical effects, but also the mental and emotional side of things.
You're so right. We've been focusing a lot on the science and the practical stuff, but weight loss journeys, they're so personal.
Absolutely.
They're tied to our feelings about our bodies and our self-worth.
Exactly. These medications, they can help you change physically, but they don't always address those underlying psychological factors.
Right, the things that might be contributing to why someone's struggling with their weight or their relationship with food in the first place.
You get it. It's not as simple as just taking a pill and poof, everything's fixed.
Right, there's this whole other layer of emotional and mental well-being that needs attention to.
And that might mean therapy or support groups or learning how to have a healthier relationship with food and body image.
It sounds like a holistic approach is key here, combining medication like Ozempic with lifestyle changes and psychological support.
I think so too, recognizing that everyone's different and there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right. What works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. It's about finding a path to a healthier you that you can actually stick with. And that often means addressing all these different dimensions of well-being.
And that's where having a doctor you trust can be so valuable, right? They can help you navigate all these options,
Oh, really?
weigh the pros and cons, make informed decisions based on your needs.
Your doctor can provide that personalized guidance and support you need.
You know, one of the articles made a comparison that really stuck with me. They talked about Ozempic and similar meds
Yeah.
in the context of how we treat other chronic conditions like diabetes or high blood pressure.
Oh, yeah. I remember that they argued that we should start thinking about obesity the same way.
Right.
Like a disease that needs ongoing management, not just a lifestyle choice that you can fix with willpower.
Exactly. And that shift in thinking is huge. It could really help reduce the stigma around obesity.
It's all about more compassion and understanding, and that's something we need more of in this space.
For sure, people who struggle with their weight, they face so much judgment and blame.
It's not fair.
No.
Yeah.
But if we start seeing obesity as a complex medical condition, it opens up the door for better treatment and more empathetic care.
And that could lead to more research,
Yeah.
better treatments, and hopefully better outcomes for millions of people.
Now, while we're talking about the potential benefits of Ozempic, we also need to be realistic and address the concerns, especially for people without diabetes.
Right. We can't ignore the ethical implications.
Like the fact that people using Ozempic off-label for weight loss is contributing to this shortage of the medication.
Exactly. And that's a problem for people with diabetes who need it to manage their condition.
It's a serious problem, and it raises questions about who should have access to this medication.
And whether it's right to prescribe it just for cosmetic weight loss, it's a real ethical dilemma.
There are also those concerns about the long-term effects of using Ozempic for weight loss. We just don't have enough data yet.
We don't know the full story.
Right. And as we talked about earlier, most people gain the weight back if they stop taking it, so it's not a permanent solution.
Not at all.
So that makes me wonder, are people prepared to take this medication forever?
It's a good question. And what if they can't afford it down the line? Or what if they have side effects and can't keep taking it?
So many things to consider. It feels like we're still figuring out the long-term implications of Ozempic for weight loss.
We need more research. But in the meantime, it's important to talk about these potential benefits and risks openly and honestly.
Right. People need to make informed decisions, and they need to do that with their doctors.
And as a society, we need to prioritize the needs of people with diabetes who need Ozempic for its intended purpose.
Absolutely. And it's important to say this again. There's no magic bullet for weight loss.
Nope.
It's a journey that takes a lot of different things, often medication, lifestyle changes, and therapy.
It's about giving people the tools they need to take control of their health with the help of professionals.
Speaking of finding what works, we haven't really talked about how Ozempic is actually taken. What's that like?
Good point. So Ozempic is a once-a-week injection, usually in your belly, thigh, or upper arm.
Okay.
And the dose you take depends on your individual needs and what your doctor recommends.
So it's not a pill you pop every day. It's a little more involved.
Yeah, and that can be a challenge for some people. Maybe they're not comfortable with needles or they prefer something more discreet.
And there's also the cost to think about. Ozempic is a brand name medication, so it can be expensive, especially without insurance.
And as we mentioned before, insurance coverage for Wegovy, the higher dose for weight loss is often really limited.
So access and affordability are real barriers for a lot of people.
For sure, and it brings up a bigger issue, the whole system of drug pricing and how we make sure people can actually get the medications they need.
It's a complicated problem with all these different social, economic, and ethical angles.
It is.
It reminds us that healthcare is about more than just the science. It's about fairness and making sure everyone has a chance to be healthy.
Couldn't agree more. It's about creating a system that actually works for everyone.
That's a great transition to our next point, all of the exciting things happening in the world of weight loss treatments.
Things are changing.
Ozempic and Wegovy are just two examples of this new wave of medications that are changing how we approach obesity.
It's amazing to see this shift. We're moving beyond the old ways of just diet and exercise.
Right.
And we're developing these targeted therapies that address the biology behind weight gain.
And that's leading to more effective and lasting results for people who've been struggling with their weight for a long time.
That's the goal. But we have to remember, these new meds aren't a cure-all.
Of course not.
They're tools that work best when they're combined with lifestyle changes and therapy.
Right. It's all about taking this whole person approach to weight management and recognizing that real change takes time.
And effort.
It has to address both the physical and mental aspects of this journey.
And it's about helping people make informed decisions about their health with the support of experts.
That brings us back to that idea of comparing Ozempic to treatments for other chronic conditions.
Yeah.
The Columbia Surgery article really emphasized that shift in how we think about obesity.
Thinking about it as a disease that needs ongoing attention, not just something you fix with willpower.
And that shift could be huge in breaking down the stigma around obesity and improving access to care for so many people.
Imagine a world where people struggling with their weight don't feel judged, and they feel supported.
Right, where they have the resources and support they need to manage their weight and live healthier, happier lives. That's a vision worth fighting for.
I agree with you there. It's a vision where health and well-being are a priority for everyone.
All right, as we're wrapping up this second part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
let's touch on the potential risks and side effects again. It's important to have all the facts.
You're right. We talked about this before, but it's worth repeating. While Ozempic is usually pretty well tolerated,
Yeah.
some people do experience those stomach issues like nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea, especially at first.
And while those usually go away as you keep taking it, you should always talk to your doctor if you have side effects that bother you or don't go away.
Open communication is so important.
And there are also those less common but more serious risks: pancreatitis, gallbladder problems, and in very rare cases, a slightly higher risk of thyroid tumors.
So it's definitely something to be aware of and discuss with your doctor. They can help you figure out if Ozempic is right for you.
Considering your health history and all the factors.
Exactly. It's all about weighing those potential benefits against the risks and making an informed decision based on your needs.
No medication is completely risk-free, right? It's about finding the right balance for you.
And working with your doctor who can guide you and support you along the way.
So as we move into the final part of our deep dive into Ozempic, I want to leave you with this thought. We've covered a lot.
Well, yeah.
From the science of how it works to the bigger picture of how it's being used, but we've mostly focused on the physical side.
That's true. And as we wrap up this conversation, it's important to bring it back to you, the listener.
What's resonating with you? What's sticking out?
We've talked about the benefits and risks, the ethical stuff, and how weight loss treatments are changing. But ultimately, the decision of whether to use Ozempic or not,
That's up to you.
it's a personal one.
It is, and it's a decision that should be made thoughtfully with your doctor and with a full understanding of what's involved.
Both the science and what it means for you personally.
In our last segment, we'll tie everything together and offer some final thoughts.
Some takeaways to help you navigate this complex issue and make good choices about your health and well-being.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Ozempic. It feels like we've gone through a whole world of information.
We have, haven't we? We talked about the science, the good, the bad, the tricky ethical questions, and even how society's view of obesity is shifting.
And now, as we wrap up this episode, I want to bring the focus back to you, the listener, because ultimately it's about what you take away from all of this.
Exactly. We've given you a lot to think about, but the real question is, how does this knowledge apply to you? What resonates with your own situation?
Ozempic, it's definitely a powerful tool. We've seen that.
Oh, for sure.
But it's not a magic solution. It's not simple, and it's not a quick fix.
Right. And that's so important to remember, that decision of whether to use Ozempic or not. It's a personal one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a decision that you should be making with your doctor, considering your health goals and those potential risks we talked about.
It's about understanding yourself, too.
Right.
Your motivations, your expectations.
Yeah. Are you looking for a quick fix? Or are you ready to commit to a healthier lifestyle for the long haul?
Those are the questions you got to ask yourself.
We've talked about all these ethical and societal shifts around Ozempic, but in the end, it comes down to making a choice that feels right for you.
A choice that aligns with your values and your goals for your well-being.
One last thing I want to leave you with, and this is something we didn't really get into today. What about the mental and emotional side of weight loss?
Oh, that's such a good point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the articles we looked at, they mainly focused on the physical effects of Ozempic.
The science of it all.
Right. But as you keep learning and thinking about your options,
Yeah.
I really encourage you to explore those psychological aspects too. How might this medication affect how you see your body, your self-esteem, your overall emotional well-being?
Those are big questions, and they remind us that health and well-being, it's about more than just the physical stuff.
So much more.
It's about taking care of our minds and hearts, too.
And that's a journey that goes way beyond any medication.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Ozempic. We hope this episode has given you the info and insights you need to make informed choices about your health and your life.
Until next time, stay curious, Stay
Okay.
informed and stay true to yourselves.